Welcome to your supply chain management preparation session. Today we are diving deep into vendor onboarding. And by the end of this lesson, you are going to walk away with complete clarity on this topic. So, let's get started. Vendor onboarding is the systematic process of integrating a new supplier into your company's supply chain. It is not just about signing papers. It is a strategic imperative that dictates how smoothly your entire operation will run. Think of it as the foundation of a house. By thoroughly vetting vendors before they enter your ecosystem, you mitigate massive operational risks early on, preventing costly disruptions down the line. Furthermore, a robust onboarding process sets the tone for establishing long-term, mutually beneficial partnerships rather than just transactional relationships. In this first part of our journey, we will focus heavily on the core phases of the onboarding lifecycle, specifically the initial vetting and sourcing stages. The vendor onboarding lifecycle begins with sourcing. This is where you identify potential suppliers who can meet your specific material or service needs. But finding them is only the first step. Next comes vetting, which is the critical phase we are focusing on today. Vetting is where you rigorously evaluate a supplier's financial health, operational capacity, and reputation to ensure they are a safe bet. Once a vendor passes the vetting stage, we move into contracting. Here, legal terms, compliance requirements, and service level agreements are formally established. After the ink is dry, integration begins. This involves setting up the vendor in your enterprise resource planning systems, establishing communication channels, and aligning logistics. Finally, we enter the quality control phase. Even after a vendor is fully onboarded, continuous monitoring is essential to ensure they consistently meet the standards agreed upon in the contract. This lifecycle ensures a secure and efficient supply chain. Now, let's zoom in on the vetting process. Why do we spend so much time and money investigating potential suppliers? First and foremost, rigorous vetting prevents costly supply chain disruptions. If a critical supplier suddenly goes bankrupt or fails to deliver, your production line stops. That costs you money by the minute. Secondly, vetting protects your brand reputation. If your vendor uses unethical labor practices or substandard materials, the public will blame your company, not the vendor. You inherit their risks. Next, it ensures regulatory and legal compliance. Many industries have strict laws regarding sourcing, and vetting guarantees your partners meet these legal standards. Furthermore, deep vetting identifies hidden financial vulnerabilities. A supplier might look great on paper, but a deep dive might reveal crushing debt that threatens their longevity. Finally, vetting filters out incompatible corporate cultures. You want partners who share your commitment to quality, communication, and continuous improvement. Let's compare what an ideal vendor looks like versus a high-risk vendor across a few key criteria. First, look at their financials. An ideal vendor is transparent and demonstrates stable, consistent growth. A high-risk vendor, however, often has opaque accounting practices or is highly leveraged with debt, making them vulnerable to market shocks. Next is communication. You want a partner who is proactive and clear, alerting you to potential delays before they happen. High-risk vendors are typically reactive, only communicating when a problem has already exploded, and often with delayed responses. When we check references, the ideal vendor has strong verifiable backing from other respected players in your industry. The high-risk vendor will provide unverifiable references, or worse, you will uncover negative feedback through back channels. Finally, consider capacity. An ideal vendor has scalable operations that can grow with your needs. A high-risk vendor is already maxed out and rigid, leaving no room for error. Take a moment to visualize the sheer scale of a modern supply chain. You are not just buying parts from a shop down the street. You are orchestrating a complex, interconnected global network of suppliers, manufacturers, and logistics providers. Every single node on this map represents a vendor. If even one of those nodes fails, the ripple effects can disrupt operations across the entire globe. This is exactly why the vetting process we are discussing is so critical. You are essentially deciding which nodes are strong enough to be plugged into your network. A weak link in Asia can halt an assembly line in North America within days. By implementing strict onboarding protocols, you are building a resilient web. You are ensuring that every connection is secure, reliable, and capable of withstanding the immense pressures of global commerce. This global perspective is what separates basic purchasing from true supply chain management. The formal vetting process usually kicks off with an RFI or request for information. Let's break down how this works. The primary purpose of the RFI is to gather preliminary data on a vendor's capabilities and their overall position in the market. It is a broad net cast to see who is out there and who might be a good fit. The key components of a standard RFI include asking for the company's history, their core competencies, and a high-level overview of their financial health. You are not asking for deep audits yet. You just want to know if they have the basic infrastructure to handle your business. The desired outcome of the RFI process is to create a refined shortlist of viable candidates. You take a large pool of potential suppliers and narrow it down to a select few who will then advance to the rigorous, deep vetting stage. It saves time and resources. Once a vendor makes the shortlist, we dive into their financial stability. This is arguably the most critical part of vetting. We start by reviewing their audited financial statements from the past 3 to 5 years. This gives us a verified look at their economic reality, not just their marketing pitch. Next, we calculate their current ratio and overall liquidity. We need to know if they have enough cash on hand to cover their short-term obligations and buy the raw materials needed for our orders. We also assess their debt-to-equity ratios. A vendor drowning in debt is a massive risk, as a slight market downturn could force them into bankruptcy. Additionally, we check their corporate credit scores and payment history with their own suppliers. If they pay late, it is a red flag. Finally, we analyze their long-term profitability trends to ensure they are a sustainable business capable of supporting a multi-year partnership. Let's pause and test your understanding of the early sourcing process. Here is your question. What is the primary purpose of issuing a request for information, or RFI, during the sourcing phase? Option A says it is to finalize the legal contract terms between both parties. Option B says it is to gather preliminary data and shortlist viable candidates. Option C suggests it is to conduct a deep, comprehensive financial audit. And option D says it is to integrate the vendor into your company's ERP system. Take a moment and pick your answer. Think carefully about where the RFI falls in the overall onboarding lifecycle. The correct answer is B. The RFI is strictly an early-stage tool used to gather basic capabilities and create a manageable shortlist. Contracts, deep financial audits, and ERP integration are all complex steps that happen much later in the onboarding lifecycle, only after a vendor passes the initial screening. Financial health is crucial, but a vendor must also have the physical ability to deliver. This is where we assess operational capacity. We begin by evaluating their manufacturing facility size and layout. Is their plant modern, organized, and capable of handling your specific product volume? We then review their current production utilization rates. If a factory is already running at 95% capacity, they have no room to accommodate your large orders without causing delays. Next, we analyze their workforce. We look at the skill levels of their operators and their employee turnover rates. High turnover often leads to inconsistent quality and missed deadlines. We also check their technological infrastructure. Do they use modern inventory software that can integrate with your systems for real-time tracking? Lastly, we assess their disaster recovery and contingency plans. If a fire or flood hits their facility, you need to know exactly how quickly they can resume operations. During vetting, every vendor is run through a risk assessment matrix. Let's look at how we categorize these risks based on probability and impact. If a vendor presents a risk that is highly probable and has a massive impact on your operations, like a history of bankruptcy, this falls into the critical risk category. In most cases, you will simply reject this vendor. If the probability is high but the impact is low, perhaps they occasionally deliver a day late. This is a moderate risk. You don't reject them, but you build mitigation strategies like holding buffer stock. If the probability is low, but the impact is catastrophic, like a factory located in a major earthquake zone, this is a severe risk. You must require strict contingency plans and secondary sourcing. Finally, if both probability and impact are low, this is an acceptable risk. You can confidently proceed with onboarding this vendor, knowing the relationship is built on solid ground. The final piece of the initial vetting puzzle involves deep background checks and reputation management. You are marrying this company's reputation to your own. We start by investigating any past legal disputes or pending lawsuits. A vendor constantly in court is a vendor distracted from their core business, which is a major red flag. Next, we rigorously check for environmental and safety violations. Partnering with a company that pollutes or endangers workers can destroy your brand's public image overnight. We also review their general media coverage and public relations history to gauge how the market perceives them. Beyond public records, we conduct direct, confidential interviews with their past and current clients to get the unvarnished truth about their reliability and communication style. Finally, we verify the ultimate beneficial ownership or UBO. You must know exactly who actually owns and controls the vendor to ensure you are not accidentally funding sanctioned entities or criminals. Now that we have completed the initial vendor vetting, we move into one of the most critical phases of onboarding. This is the establishment of a rock-solid legal framework through contract compliance. You simply cannot rely on handshakes in modern supply chain management. We must clearly define our service level agreements or SLAs. These dictate exactly what performance metrics the vendor must hit, such as delivery times and defect rates. Next, we set up clear penalty and reward structures. If a vendor consistently misses deadlines, what is the financial recourse? We also have to lock down intellectual property protection. When you share proprietary data with a manufacturer, your contract must legally prevent them from sharing it with competitors. Finally, we ensure strict regulatory alignment. The contract must explicitly state that the vendor will comply with all local and international laws. This protects your brand from downstream liability and legal exposure. As you draft these agreements, you will generally choose between standard and custom contracts. Let us compare them so you know exactly when to use which. First, look at the use case. Standard contracts are perfect for low-risk, transactional vendors like an office supply provider. Custom contracts are reserved for high-value, strategic vendors like a primary component manufacturer. Next is negotiation time. Standard agreements take minimal time, often just a few days, because they use boilerplate language. Custom agreements require extensive back and forth, sometimes taking weeks or months to finalize. Because of this, the legal costs vary significantly. Standard contracts keep your legal expenses low. Custom contracts, requiring specialized lawyers to draft specific clauses, will drive your legal costs much higher. Finally, consider flexibility. Standard contracts are rigid. You offer them on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. Custom contracts are highly tailored, allowing both parties to negotiate specific terms that protect their unique operational interests. Let us break down the specific legal clauses you must include in any robust vendor agreement. These are your safety nets. The first is the indemnification clause. This is absolutely critical. It protects your company against third-party claims that arise from the vendor's negligence. If your vendor uses stolen software to provide a service to you, the indemnification clause ensures they pay the legal damages, not you. Next, you need a termination for cause clause. This gives you the legal right to immediately end the contract if the vendor breaches specific terms, like failing a major quality audit or going bankrupt. Without this, you could be trapped in a failing partnership. Finally, we have the force majeure clause. This covers unforeseeable, unavoidable events like natural disasters or global pandemics that prevent the vendor from fulfilling their duties. It dictates how delays are handled and when you can legally seek alternative suppliers without penalty. Let us pause for a quick knowledge check to ensure these legal concepts are clear before we move on to risk assessment. Here is your question. Which clause protects your company if a vendor's negligence causes a third-party lawsuit against you? Option A is termination for convenience. Option B is indemnification. Option C is force majeure. And option D is service level agreement. Take a moment to think about the definitions we just covered and pick your answer. The correct answer is B, indemnification. Remember, this is your primary financial shield. While a service level agreement dictates performance and force majeure covers acts of nature, it is the indemnification clause that specifically shifts the legal and financial burden of a third-party lawsuit back onto the vendor who actually caused the problem. This is why your legal team will spend so much time negotiating it. Once the contract is signed, we must continuously evaluate the vendor's risk profile. You are looking at a visual representation of a vendor risk assessment matrix. This is a fundamental tool in supply chain management. On one axis, we plot the probability of a negative event occurring. On the other axis, we plot the potential impact that event would have on your business. A vendor supplying office coffee might have a high probability of a late delivery, but the impact is negligible, keeping them in the green zone. However, a sole source supplier of a critical microchip has a massive potential impact. Even if the probability of them failing is low, they immediately move into the yellow or red zones of your matrix. You must allocate your auditing resources based on this heat map. High-risk vendors require constant monitoring, quarterly financial checks, and stringent quality control, while low-risk vendors can be managed with automated, annual reviews. A major component of that risk assessment is evaluating financial stability. A bankrupt vendor will instantly break your supply chain. Here is the standard workflow for a financial check. First, we request the vendor's audited financial statements, including balance sheets and income statements for the past 3 years. Next, our finance team analyzes key ratios. We look closely at the current ratio to ensure they have enough liquid assets to cover short-term liabilities and the debt-to-equity ratio to gauge their leverage. Then, we compare these metrics against our internal risk thresholds. Are they financially healthy enough to survive an economic downturn? If they pass the threshold, we approve the vendor and proceed with onboarding. But if they fail, we do not necessarily reject them outright. We might require a guarantor, ask for a letter of credit, or adjust payment terms to mitigate our financial exposure before moving forward. Beyond financial health, modern supply chains are deeply interconnected digitally. This brings us to information security vetting. First, we must evaluate the vendor's data encryption standards. Any data transmitted between your systems and theirs must be encrypted both in transit and at rest. Second, we review their access control policies. We need to know exactly who inside their organization has access to your sensitive data and ensure they enforce multi-factor authentication. Third, we assess their incident response plans. If the vendor suffers a cyber breach, how quickly are they contractually obligated to notify you? every minute counts during a breach. Fourth, we verify their third-party security audits. We never just take their word for it. We require independent penetration testing reports. Finally, we ensure data sovereignty compliance. If your data cannot legally leave your country, you must verify that the vendor's servers are physically located within your borders. To streamline security vetting, we often rely on established compliance frameworks. Let us review the most common ones you will encounter. First is ISO 27001. This is the international gold standard for information security. If a vendor has this, it proves they have a continuous, documented risk management process in place. Next is SUSI 2 Type I, which is crucial for cloud service providers. Unlike a point-in-time audit, Type I proves the operating effectiveness of their security controls over a period of several months. Then we have GDPR. If your vendor touches any data belonging to European Union citizens, they must comply with this. It mandates strict user consent and the right to have data permanently deleted. Finally, if you operate in the medical sector, you will look for HIPAA compliance. This framework strictly governs how protected health information and medical records are stored, transmitted, and accessed by the vendor. Now that we have secured the contract, verified financial stability, and locked down data security, we transition to the physical product. This is where quality control checkpoints come in. The first step is establishing baseline quality metrics. We must define exactly what a perfect product looks like using precise engineering tolerances. Next, we define acceptable defect rates. Zero defects is rarely possible. We use metrics like parts per million to set a realistic, contractual threshold for failure. To monitor this, we require the vendor to implement statistical process control. They must use statistical methods to monitor their manufacturing lines and catch deviations early. We also schedule unannounced site audits. Sending inspectors to the factory floor without warning ensures the vendor maintains standards every single day. Finally, we create corrective action plans. When a defect is found, the vendor must have a documented process to fix the root cause permanently. The most critical quality checkpoint during onboarding is the first article inspection, or FAI. This happens before mass production begins. Let us walk through the workflow. It starts when the vendor produces the very first unit or a small initial batch using the actual mass production tooling and processes. This unit undergoes detailed measurement. Our quality engineers will measure every single dimension, test the material properties, and verify it against the original engineering blueprints. We then ask the critical question: does it perfectly meet the blueprint specifications? There is no room for estimation here. It is a strict pass or fail based on the defined tolerances. If it passes, we formally approve mass production. The vendor is now cleared to run the assembly line at full capacity. If it fails, production is halted. The vendor must perform a root cause analysis, adjust their tooling, and produce a new first article for re-inspection. Now that we have established contract compliance, we must shift our focus to the physical product or service. This brings us to establishing quality control checkpoints. The first major checkpoint is pre-shipment inspections. You never want to discover a defect after the goods have arrived at your facility. Next, we implement first article testing protocols. This means the vendor produces a small sample run for your approval before mass production begins. It is a critical safeguard. Once production is running, we use statistical process control, or SPC. This involves tracking manufacturing metrics to ensure consistency over time. But what happens when things go wrong? That is where corrective action plans, known as CAPA, come into play. You need a structured way for vendors to fix root causes. Finally, ongoing quality audits ensure that the vendor does not slip back into bad habits. Quality is not a one-time event. it is a continuous partnership. Let's visualize how a standard quality control process flows during vendor onboarding. Everything begins with the first article inspection. This is the initial prototype or first batch the vendor produces. You are checking to see if they truly understand your specifications. If that first article passes, the vendor is cleared to move into mass production. This is where the real test of their capacity and consistency happens. During or immediately after mass production, we conduct a rigorous batch inspection. We pull a statistically significant sample to evaluate. Based on that sample, you face a decision point: approval or rejection. If the batch meets your acceptable quality level, it is approved for shipment. If it fails, it triggers a corrective action request. The vendor must investigate the root cause, fix the issue, and submit a new batch for inspection. This cycle protects your supply chain. As you monitor your new vendors, you need to track different types of metrics. Let's compare the key categories you will use. First, we have quality metrics. The focus area here is the physical product or the direct service output. A classic example of a key performance indicator in this category is the defect rate. You are measuring exactly how many units fail to meet your standards. Next, we look at compliance metrics. This is entirely different. The focus here is on regulatory and contractual adherence. An example KPI would be the audit pass rate. This tells you if the vendor is following labor laws, environmental regulations, and your specific contractual terms. Finally, we track delivery metrics. The focus area is supply chain reliability and logistics. The most common KPI here is on-time delivery percentage. Even if a vendor produces perfect quality, they are risky if they cannot deliver your goods on schedule. Let's break down one of the most important concepts in vendor quality control. I want to explain the acceptable quality level, commonly known as AQL. By definition, AQL is the maximum number of defective units permitted in a sample size before the entire batch is rejected. You cannot inspect a million items one by one, so you rely on this mathematical standard. The purpose of AQL is to balance risk and cost. It protects the buyer from receiving poor quality goods while giving the vendor a realistic standard. Perfection is incredibly expensive, so AQL defines what level of imperfection is commercially acceptable. In application, AQL uses standardized sampling tables. You select a sample size based on your total order quantity, and the table tells you exactly how many defects are allowed. If you find more defects than the AQL limit, you reject the shipment and demand corrective action. Let's pause for a quick knowledge check to ensure we are aligned on these critical metrics. Here is your question. Which metric specifically measures a vendor's adherence to regulatory and contractual terms? Option A is defect rate. Option B is on-time delivery. Option C is audit pass rate. And option D is first article inspection. Take a brief moment to think about what we just covered and choose the best answer. The correct answer is option C, audit pass rate. Let's review why. Defect rate measures physical product quality. On-time delivery measures logistics and supply chain reliability. First article inspection is a process step, not a continuous metric. Audit pass rate is the specific metric used to verify that a vendor is consistently following the legal, environmental, and contractual rules you established during the initial vetting phase. Tracking this ensures long-term compliance. Onboarding does not truly end once the first contract is signed. You must transition into continuous monitoring and audits. This begins with mandatory annual performance reviews. You need a formal meeting to discuss the vendor's performance over the past year and set goals. To ensure everyday compliance, you should conduct unannounced site inspections. If a vendor only performs well when they know you are coming, they are a massive risk to your supply chain. You must also continue financial health tracking. A vendor that goes bankrupt will suddenly halt your production, so you must monitor their stability constantly. All of this data feeds into regular supplier scorecard updates. This scorecard ranks your vendors, helping you decide who gets more business and who gets phased out. Finally, this process requires a constant re-evaluation of risk profiles. Geopolitical events or market shifts can instantly change a vendor's risk level. To truly master supply chain management, you must view vendor relationships as a continuous cycle. Let's look at the vendor lifecycle loop. The cycle always begins with sourcing and vetting. This is where you identify potential partners and conduct your initial due diligence. Once selected, they move into onboarding and contracting. This is the phase we have been detailing, where you establish compliance rules, set quality checkpoints, and sign agreements. After onboarding, you enter the continuous monitoring phase. Here, you are tracking those KPIs, conducting audits, and updating supplier scorecards on a regular basis. The data from monitoring leads directly into performance optimization. You work collaboratively with the vendor to fix inefficiencies, reduce costs, and improve quality over time. Finally, you reach the renewal or exit decision. Based on their performance, you either renew their contract for another cycle, or you exit the relationship and begin sourcing a replacement. Before we wrap up, let's do a quick active recall exercise to lock in the most important terminology from this section. First prompt: the maximum number of defective units permitted in a sample size is known as the what? Think about the statistical threshold we discussed. That is the acceptable quality level, or AQL. It balances your risk with realistic production costs. Next prompt: what do we call a structured plan required from a vendor to fix the root cause of a defect? That is a corrective action plan, often abbreviated as CAPA. It ensures mistakes are permanently fixed, not just temporarily hidden. Final prompt: the initial prototype run that you check before mass production begins is called the what? That is the first article inspection. Passing this step is the ultimate prerequisite before a vendor is allowed to scale up their manufacturing operations for your company. We have finally reached the end of the rigorous onboarding journey. The last step is granting final onboarding approval. This requires formal executive sign-off on the completed vendor profile, confirming that all vetting, compliance, and quality checks are successfully passed. Next, the vendor is officially integrated into your enterprise procurement systems, allowing your purchasing teams to seamlessly generate purchase orders. Simultaneously, your finance department will handle the secure activation of payment channels, ensuring the vendor can be compensated without delays. Finally, the relationship transitions from the specialized onboarding team over to standard operational management. The vendor is now a fully active, trusted part of your supply chain. And that wraps up everything you need to know about vendor onboarding for your supply chain management journey. In our next class, we will be moving on to inventory optimization strategies, so make sure you stay tuned. Visit Examiverse AI Studio to automate your training modules.